After driving 8 hours through a mountain blizzard with 3 herniated discs in my spine, just to bring my son a $75,000 check to save his business, I limped up to his front door and heard his wife say, "If the old fool slips on the ice and cracks his skull, we can skip the paperwork and go straight to the inheritance." My son laughed and replied, "Just make sure he signs the conservatorship papers first. Once we control his finances, that ranch in Montana is as good as sold. The old man will be in a nursing home by spring." So I did not knock. Instead, I walked back to my truck, reached under the seat, and pulled out a phone that would destroy everything they had built before the turkey was cold. Tell me in the comments if you have ever sacrificed everything for someone who saw you as nothing but a paycheck. Like and subscribe for more stories of justice. The wind cut through my thin jacket like a blade as I stood on that porch in the darkness. My name is Walter Hayes. I am 67 years old, and to my family, I am just a broken-down rancher living alone in a cabin in rural Montana, surviving on Social Security and the occasional odd job fixing fences for neighboring farms. They see my calloused hands, my faded jeans, my 20-year-old pickup truck with the cracked windshield, and they see a man who never amounted to anything, a man who is one bad winter away from the poorhouse. But appearances can be the greatest weapon a man possesses. 42 years ago, I started Hayes Development Corporation with a single backhoe and a dream. I built shopping malls, hospitals, highways, and apartment complexes across 14 states. At my peak, I employed over 3,000 workers. When I sold my majority stake and stepped back from daily operations 8 years ago, my net worth was $350 million. But nobody knows that. Not my son. Not his greedy wife, not a soul in my family. When my wife Eleanor died 6 years ago, something inside me broke. She was the only person who ever loved me for who I was, not what I had. After the funeral, I watched my son Marcus and his wife Victoria circle like vultures, asking about life insurance policies, about property deeds, about whether Mom had any jewelry worth appraising. They did not ask how I was coping. They did not offer to stay an extra day to help me grieve. They asked about money. That was when I decided to disappear. I transferred everything into a series of blind trusts managed by my attorney, Robert Chen, a man who had been my friend since law school. I bought a small ranch in Montana under a different corporate name. I started wearing old clothes, driving old vehicles, living a simple life. I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to see who my son really was when he thought there was nothing left to take. For 6 years, I watched. I visited twice a year, always with modest gifts, always playing the part of the struggling retiree. And for 6 years, I watched my son grow colder, more distant, more impatient with every visit. I watched his wife Victoria roll her eyes when I talked about the weather or the price of hay. I watched them put me in the basement guest room while their friends got the nice bedrooms upstairs. I watched, and I waited, and I hoped I was wrong about them. I was not wrong. 3 weeks ago, Marcus called me for the first time in 4 months. His voice was strained, desperate. He told me his commercial real estate company was in trouble. Bad investments, he said. The market turned against him, he said. He needed $75,000 to make payroll and avoid bankruptcy. He promised to pay me back within a year. I knew it was a lie. Robert had already informed me that Marcus was not struggling because of bad investments. He was struggling because he had been embezzling from his own company to fund his wife's shopping addiction and their country club lifestyle. He was 3 months behind on his mortgage. His business partners were threatening lawsuits. He was drowning, and he saw me as a life raft. But I am a father, and despite everything, some foolish part of me still loved my son. I decided to make one last trip. I decided to bring him the money, to sit down with him face to face, and to give him a chance to come clean. I told myself that maybe, just maybe, if I showed him grace, he would show me honesty. So I drove. 8 hours through the Rocky Mountains in November. The weather forecast had warned of a major storm system moving through Colorado, but I left anyway. I wanted to arrive before Thanksgiving dinner. I wanted to surprise my grandson Tommy, who I had not seen in almost a year. I had spent 3 weeks carving him a wooden train set by hand, each car detailed with tiny windows and wheels that actually turned. It sat in a box on my passenger seat, wrapped in old newspaper to protect it from the cold. The storm hit me just past Bozeman. Within an hour, I could barely see the road. The snow came down in sheets so thick that my headlights just reflected back at me like I was driving into a white wall. My back screamed with every bump and pothole. The herniated discs that had plagued me for a decade felt like hot knives twisting in my spine. I had to stop twice just to get out and walk around, to keep the muscles from seizing up completely. I thought about Eleanor during that drive. I thought about the first Thanksgiving we spent together, back when we were young and poor and ridiculously happy. We had a turkey that was too small and stuffing that was too salty, and we laughed until our sides hurt. I thought about how she would have handled this situation with Marcus. She always saw the best in people, always believed that love could fix anything. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was too cynical, too jaded by decades of business deals where everyone had an angle. By the time I pulled into Marcus's driveway in the suburbs of Denver, it was almost 7 in the evening. The snow had finally let up, but the damage was done. My truck looked like it had been through a war, covered in road salt and ice. I could barely feel my fingers despite the gloves I was wearing. My back had locked up so badly that I had to grip the steering wheel just to pull myself out of the cab. Their house was beautiful, a 5-bedroom colonial with stone accents and a 3-car garage. Christmas lights were already hung along the roofline, twinkling in the darkness even though Thanksgiving was not until tomorrow. Through the large front windows, I could see people moving around inside. It looked like they were hosting a party. I had not known about any party. I grabbed the wooden train set, tucked the check into my coat pocket, and began the long walk to the front door. Each step sent a jolt of pain up my spine. I was so focused on not falling on the icy walkway that I almost did not notice the voices until I reached the porch. The side window was cracked open just an inch, probably to let out the heat from whatever they were cooking. And that tiny gap carried their words to me as clearly as if they were standing beside me. "He is driving through a blizzard right now," Victoria was saying. Her voice had that sharp, mocking tone I had grown to recognize. At his age, with his back problems, honestly, Marcus, the man has a death wish. "Let him come," my son replied. I heard ice clinking in a glass. "We need him to sign the conservatorship papers before the lawyers can move forward. Once we have legal control of his finances, we can access that Montana property. Do you know what that land is worth now? $3 million at least. The developers have been circling that area for years. And he just sits there in that rotting cabin like some kind of hermit," Victoria said with disgust. "It is pathetic. A grown man living off Social Security when he could be monetizing his assets. He is too proud and too stupid to see the opportunity. That is why we are doing him a favor," Marcus said. I heard him set down his glass. "The doctors I have been consulting with say it should be straightforward. Early onset dementia is easy to establish if you have the right witnesses. Dr. Patterson is coming to dinner tomorrow. He owes me a favor from that property deal last year. One conversation with Dad, a few concerned observations, and we can have the paperwork filed by Monday." My hand was frozen against the cold wood of their front door. Not from the temperature, from the horror of what I was hearing. "What about Tommy?" Victoria asked. "He actually likes the old man for some reason. He has been asking when Grandpa is coming for weeks. Tommy is 8 years old. He will get over it. Besides, once Dad is in a facility, we can bring Tommy to visit occasionally. Make it look like we are the caring family taking care of our elderly parent. It will actually help our image at the club." "Speaking of Tommy," Victoria said, her voice dropping slightly, "he is still upset that we canceled his birthday party last month. He keeps moping around. It is getting annoying. We could not afford a party," Marcus snapped. "Not until we get access to Dad's money. Once this conservatorship goes through, we can give Tommy whatever he wants. New toys, new clothes, private school. He just has to be patient." I stood there in the snow, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my temples. They were going to have me declared mentally incompetent. They were going to steal my home, the ranch where Eleanor and I had planned to grow old together. They were going to lock me away in some facility while they spent money that was not even theirs. And Tommy, My grandson. They had canceled his birthday party because of money. They saw him as an inconvenience, a prop to be used for appearances at the country club. The wooden train set suddenly felt impossibly heavy in my arms. I set it down gently on the porch, right next to their welcome mat with its cheerful "Bless this home" message. I pulled the check from my pocket and looked at it one last time. $75,000. Money I had brought out of love, out of foolish hope. I tore it in half. Then in half again. I let the pieces fall into the snow like confetti at a funeral. Then I walked away. Not in defeat. In purpose. I made it back to my truck. Every step an agony. But I did not care about the pain anymore. The pain was fuel now. I reached under the passenger seat and pulled out a black case I had not opened in years. Inside was a satellite phone, a titanium black card with no spending limit, and a small leather folder containing documents that proved exactly who I was. I dialed a number from memory. "Hayes Residence," came a familiar voice. It was Robert Chen, my attorney, working late as always. "Robert, it is Walter." There was a pause. "Walter, I was not expecting to hear from you tonight. Is everything all right?" "No," I said quietly. "Activate Protocol Omega. Full disclosure. No restrictions." Another pause. Longer this time. "Walter, are you certain? Once we do this, there is no going back. Your cover will be blown. Every asset, every holding, every connection you have hidden will become visible." "I am certain. May I ask what happened?" "My son is planning to have me declared incompetent so he can steal my ranch and put me in a nursing home. I just heard him discussing it with his wife. They have a doctor coming to dinner tomorrow to help fabricate a dementia diagnosis." Robert let out a long breath. "I see. Well then, what do you need?" "I need you to buy the debt on Marcus's company. All of it. Every loan, every line of credit, every outstanding obligation. I want to own every dollar he owes to anyone. That can be arranged within hours. His company is hemorrhaging money. The creditors will be happy to sell. I also need you to find out who holds the mortgage on his house. Buy that too. Consider it done. And Robert, one more thing. Book the penthouse at the Ritz-Carlton downtown Denver. Send a tailor, a barber, and a full staff. I want a car waiting for me when I arrive. Something appropriate. A Bentley? That will do. And Robert? Yes? Happy Thanksgiving." I hung up and pulled my truck back onto the road. The heater had given out somewhere around Helena, but I did not feel the cold anymore. I felt something I had not felt in years. I felt alive. The drive to downtown Denver took 45 minutes. By the time I pulled into the valet circle at the Ritz-Carlton, the hotel staff was already waiting. A young man in a pristine uniform approached my window, his expression carefully neutral as he took in my rusted truck, my worn clothes, my weathered face. "Sir, I believe you may have the wrong entrance. The main parking is around." I held up the black titanium card. His eyes widened. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his tone instantly transforming. "We have been expecting you. Please, allow me to take care of your vehicle. The penthouse is ready." I stepped out of the truck, my back screaming in protest, and walked through the gleaming lobby like I owned the place. Because, technically, I did. Hayes Development Corporation had built this hotel 23 years ago. I had attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony myself. The next 12 hours were a blur of preparation. A massage therapist worked on my back until the knots finally released. A tailor took my measurements and produced a charcoal three-piece suit that fit like it had been made for me my entire life. A barber trimmed my hair and beard until I looked 10 years younger. When I finally looked in the mirror, I did not recognize myself. The man staring back at me was not a broken-down rancher. He was Walter Hayes, founder of a construction empire, philanthropist, and one of the wealthiest men in Colorado. He was a man who had built hospitals and highways, a man who had created thousands of jobs and donated millions to charity, a man who had been hiding in plain sight for 6 years, waiting for this exact moment. Robert called at 9 in the morning with updates. He had acquired all of Marcus's business debt for 63 cents on the dollar. The creditors were desperate to get anything back. He had also purchased the mortgage on the house, which was 3 months delinquent, and he had uncovered something else. "Walter, You should know. Your son has not just been embezzling from his company. He has been running a fraudulent investment scheme. He convinced several of his business partners to invest in properties that do not exist. The total exposure is over $2 million. If this becomes public, he is facing serious criminal charges. I sat with that information for a long moment. My son was not just greedy. He was a criminal. Do the other investors know? I asked. Not yet, but they will find out soon. The scheme is starting to unravel. That is probably why he needed your money so desperately. He was trying to plug holes before the whole thing collapsed. Who are the victims? Mostly retirement investors, people who trusted him with their life savings. There is an elderly couple, the Hendersons, who put in their entire pension, a widow named Margaret Chen, no relation to me, who invested her husband's life insurance. Good people, Walter. Ordinary people who got taken advantage of. I closed my eyes. Make them whole. Excuse me? The victims. Every single one of them. Pay back their investments with interest. Do it anonymously. Set up a trust to handle the distributions. That will be over $2 million, Walter. I know what it will be. Do it anyway. Those people should not suffer because my son is a thief. There was a long pause. You are a good man, Walter Hayes. I am a father who failed his son. The least I can do is clean up the mess. At 2 p.m, I arrived at Marcus's house in the back of a black Bentley. The driver opened my door, and I stepped out onto the same driveway where I had stood 12 hours earlier in my old truck and worn clothes. The transformation was complete. The front door opened before I could knock. It was Victoria, dressed in an elegant burgundy dress, her face arranged in a welcoming smile that froze when she saw me. Walter? She blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what she was seeing. Is that really you? You look so different. Happy Thanksgiving, Victoria, I said, stepping past her into the foyer. The house was filled with guests, maybe 30 people, all dressed in their holiday finest. Crystal glasses clinked. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The smell of roasting turkey filled the air. And there, in the center of the living room, was my son Marcus. He was wearing a navy blazer and holding court with a group of men in expensive suits. He was laughing at something, his hand gesturing broadly, the picture of confidence and success. Until he saw me. His face went pale. His glass stopped halfway to his lips. He stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. Dad? He started walking toward me, his expression shifting rapidly from shock to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. What are you wearing? Where did you get those clothes? How did you get here? I drove, I said simply. Well, actually, I was driven. The Bentley handles much better than my old truck. Bentley? What Bentley? Dad, are you feeling okay? He reached out to touch my arm, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I had heard too many times. Maybe you should sit down. You have had a long trip. Victoria, can you get my father some water? I do not need water, Marcus. I looked around the room at all the watching faces. I recognized some of them. Business associates of my son, country club friends, the kind of people who measured worth in square footage and stock portfolios. But I could use a moment of everyone's attention. Dad, whatever you are thinking. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, raising my voice just enough to cut through the conversation. The room fell silent. The string quartet stopped playing. I apologize for the interruption. My name is Walter Hayes, and I am the father of your host. Most of you probably know me as the retired rancher from Montana, the simple old man who shows up twice a year in his flannel shirts and work boots. I walked slowly to the center of the room, letting everyone get a good look at my suit, my shoes, my general demeanor. The contrast with their expectations was deliberate. What you do not know is that 42 years ago, I founded Hayes Development Corporation. You may have heard of it. We built the Meridian Shopping Center downtown, the St. Joseph's Medical Complex, the Interstate 70 expansion. Before I retired, we employed over 3,000 people and completed projects in 14 states. A murmur went through the crowd. I saw recognition dawn on several faces. One older man in the corner actually dropped his champagne glass. Hayes Development? Someone whispered. That Hayes? My net worth at retirement was approximately $350 million, I continued. Today, with various investments and holdings, It is somewhat higher. I will spare you the exact figures." Marcus had gone completely white. He looked like he might faint. For the past 6 years, I have lived simply. I wore old clothes. I drove an old truck. I told no one the truth about my finances. Do you know why? I turned to look directly at my son, because I wanted to know if my family loved me for me, or if they only loved me for what they could take. "Dad," Marcus started, his voice cracking. "I do not know what you think you heard, but—" "I heard everything, Marcus." My voice was quiet but carried through the silent room. "I stood on your porch last night. I heard you and Victoria discussing your plan to have me declared incompetent. I heard you talk about the doctor you bribed to fabricate a dementia diagnosis. I heard you calculating the value of my ranch and how quickly you could sell it once I was safely locked away in a nursing home." Gasps echoed through the room. Victoria let out a small cry. "That is not true," she said desperately. "He is confused. He is old. This is exactly what we were worried about. His mind is going." "Is it?" I pulled out my phone and pressed play on a recording. My own voice came through first, followed by Robert's, followed by a detailed summary of every debt my son owed, every fraudulent deal he had made, every investor he had cheated. "This recording was made this morning by my attorney," I said over the playback. "It documents your full financial situation, Marcus, including the $2.3 million you stole from your business partners through fake investment schemes." The room exploded. Several men in suits began shouting questions. A woman near the back pulled out her phone and started recording. Marcus grabbed my arm, his grip desperate. "Dad, please. We can talk about this privately. You do not understand the pressure I have been under." The market turned against me. I had no choice. I was going to pay everyone back, I swear. I just needed time. Time? I pulled my arm free. "You had time, Marcus. You had 6 years of time while I lived in that cabin, waiting for you to visit, waiting for you to call, waiting for any sign that you saw me as anything other than a future inheritance." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder of documents. "As of midnight last night, I am the sole holder of your business debt. Every loan, every line of credit, every obligation. You owe me now, Marcus, and I am calling it all due immediately. Can you pay $1.4 million right now? This minute?" He shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "I also own the mortgage on this house. You are 3 months behind, Marcus. According to the terms, I have every right to begin foreclosure proceedings." Victoria screamed something incoherent and ran toward me. 2 of the male guests grabbed her arms, holding her back. "And finally," I said, pulling out my phone again, "I have forwarded all documentation of your fraud to the district attorney's office. They should be reviewing it right now. I expect you will be hearing from them very soon." I looked around the room at all the shocked faces, the recording phones, the chaos I had created. But that is not why I came here today. I walked toward the staircase. I knew exactly where I was going. I had been to this house before, back when they still pretended to be happy to see me. I climbed the stairs, my back pain forgotten, and walked down the hallway to the last door on the left. Tommy's room. He was sitting on his bed, wearing his good pants and a button-down shirt. His hair was neatly combed. He had clearly been told to stay upstairs while the adults had their party. When he saw me in the doorway, his face lit up with a joy that cracked something open in my chest. "Grandpa." He ran to me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "You came. Mom said you probably would not make it because of the snow, but I knew you would come. I knew it." I knelt down, ignoring the pain, and hugged him back. "Of course I came, Tommy. I will always come for you. You look different, Grandpa. You look like a movie star." I laughed, the first genuine laugh I had felt in years. I cleaned up a bit. "Listen, Tommy, how would you like to go on an adventure with me? Just you and me." His eyes went wide. "Really? Where?" "Anywhere you want. We could go to Disneyland. We could go to the beach. We could go back to my ranch in Montana, and I could teach you how to ride horses. Could we see the mountains? I have always wanted to see the mountains up close. We can see all the mountains you want." I picked him up, holding him close, and carried him down the stairs. The room had descended into complete chaos. People were shouting, crying, demanding explanations. Marcus was on his knees, begging someone to call a lawyer. Victoria was being restrained by what looked like hotel security, who had arrived at some point. I walked through the middle of it all, carrying my grandson, heading straight for the front door. "Dad," Marcus screamed behind me. "Dad, you cannot take him. He is my son. This is kidnapping." I stopped and turned. "Actually, Marcus, as of this morning, I am Tommy's legal guardian. The paperwork was filed by your own business partners 3 months ago, when they started investigating your fraud and realized you might be facing criminal charges. They were concerned about your son's welfare. They reached out to me through Robert. I have been quietly working with Child Protective Services ever since. I looked at my son one last time, at the man I had raised, had loved, had hoped would grow into someone better than this. You are not going to prison because of me, Marcus. You are going to prison because of your choices. But Tommy will never suffer for what you have done. I will make sure of that." I turned and walked out the door into the cold November air. The Bentley was waiting, its engine running, warm air spilling from the open door. I placed Tommy gently in the back seat and climbed in beside him. "Where are we going, Grandpa?" "Home," I said, wrapping my arm around his small shoulders. "We are going home." As the car pulled away, I looked back one last time at the house that had represented everything I thought I wanted. A successful son, a loving family, a legacy. But legacy is not about money or property or business empires. Legacy is about the people we choose to love and the way we choose to love them. My son had failed that test, but sitting beside me was a second chance. An 8-year-old boy who still believed that grandpas were heroes and that the world could be kind. I was going to spend whatever time I had left making sure he never lost that belief. The mountains rose up ahead of us, white-capped and magnificent against the winter sky. Tommy pressed his face to the window, his breath fogging the glass. "Grandpa?" "Yes? Thank you for coming to get me." I pulled him closer and kissed the top of his head. "Always, Tommy. Always. That Thanksgiving taught me something that all the money in the world could not buy. Family is not defined by blood. Family is defined by who shows up when the snow is falling and the roads are dangerous and there is nothing to gain except love." My son forgot that. His wife never knew it. But Tommy and I were going to spend the rest of our lives proving it, one adventure at a time. If you believe that protecting the innocent is worth any sacrifice, hit the like button and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved to protect someone who truly needed you?